Alright everybody, how are we doing today? So I'll finish up with this final story. It says, from Reuters, Hong Kong police fire tear gas as city is again roiled by protests. Is this going to be another Tiananmen Square type situation? Hong Kong police fired multiple tear gas rounds on Saturday night in confrontations with black-clad activists in the city Kowloon area as the Chinese-controlled territory was again rocked by anti-government protests. Police had kept out of sight during the afternoon as tens of thousands of protesters marched through Mong Kok, usually a busy shopping district, but they charged onto the streets after 9 p.m., with hundreds of officers in riot gear pushing back crowds who jeered them. At around midnight in Wong Tai Sin, a residential area, protesters hurled umbrellas and other objects at police who responded with pepper spray and then tear gas. Umbrellas? Throughout the evening in Kowloon, police confronted protesters who retreated and regrouped. Some were detained. Protests against a proposed bill allowing people to be extradited to stand trial in mainland China have grown increasingly violent since June, with police accused of excessive force and failing to protect protesters from suspected gang attacks. On Saturday, protesters set fires in the streets outside a police station and in rubbish bins and blocked the entrance to the Cross Harbour Tunnel, cutting a major artery linking Hong Kong Island and the Kowloon Peninsula. I've never seen anything like this, but the protesters are right, but they shouldn't be violent, said Ray, 57, a retired hotel worker who came from his flat on a side street near where police and protesters were in a standoff. The government should listen to the people and what they need, he said. In a statement issued after midnight, the Hong Kong government said it strongly condemned the radical protesters. Well, honestly, while it is true that they maybe should not have been violent, it does stand to reason, however, that responding to umbrellas with tear gas and other forms of military-grade munitions does seem a little inappropriate. Just putting that out there. That it does seem a little inappropriate. It certainly doesn't seem particularly proportional. And being violent about your protest always attracts unwanted attention and kind of places you squarely in the wrong, giving a government an excuse to fight back against you, which is the last thing you need to give the Chinese government. After the afternoon march, protesters had disappeared to different parts of Kowloon, setting up barriers across busy streets to block traffic. Many carried hiking sticks, and some held homemade shields. Yeah, I can see those right now in a photo here. Well, from my understanding of certain warfare tactics, some of the shields they made I'm seeing are pretty legitimate. Others look like they're made of wood and foam. They were literally just using whatever they had on hand. But at least one guy has a legitimate metal shield. That's sort of a Captain America-esque design minus the color scheme. It's just sort of a dark gray color. Protesters, many masked and wearing helmets and goggles, have adopted increasingly sophisticated tactics. We don't stay in the same place. We are using hit-and-run tactics, said a construction worker in Mong Kok who called himself Water. Yeah, this style of protesting really isn't going to be doing you any favors. This is just going to give your government an excuse to use violence against you. They'll be like, all they have to do or say is, "See, they hit us first." You know, we're vindicated. We were right. They attacked us first. Do you really want to set that kind of precedent and give them the excuse? Keep in mind, the Chinese government was responsible for literally running a guy over with a tank. Or the straight-up massacre in the Tiananmen Square, as I mentioned earlier. These are not the kind of people you want to give any excuses to. If you play the role of the martyr or the victim, to some extent you will gain a great deal of sympathy. Some may even take your side. If the police are too strong, we will leave. They are a rock, so we must be like water. He added, echoing a refrain of Hong Kong martial arts legend Bruce Lee that has been taken up by activists. Organizers said 120,000 people joined the rally. Police said 42,000 people had joined the march at its peak. Shuttered shops. In the Nathan Road area, normally packed on a Saturday, shops were shuttered, including 7-Eleven convenience stores, jewelry, chain chow, Thai, Fook, and watch bands, Rolex, and Tudor. The main entrance to the landmark Peninsula Hotel was closed. Protesters, many wearing yellow or white hard hats, chanted "Age of Revolution" and Hong Kongers add oil, a popular exhortation in Cantonese. Earlier marchers carried protesters showing protesters tending to a young child with the words "Protect the Future." The crowd was mostly young, but also included families and older people. Some young couples held hands. Police supporters. At a separate afternoon rally in Hong Kong Island's Victoria Park, thousands of people, mostly wearing white, with many waving Hong Kong and Chinese flags, shouted slogans in support of the police. Yes, because when you choose to act violent, some people are going to take the side of the person you are committing violence against. These protesters, while somewhat in the right, are being unnecessarily provocative and divisive. So this sort of reaction is only natural. Pro-Beijing lawmaker Junius Ho was greeted with strong applause. "We are the real Hong Kong people who are not the same as those black-shirted thugs. We don't need a so-called HK revolution. We only need to do our best, which is enough," he told the crowd. Sylvia Lamb, 61, who described herself as a housewife, said she had turned up the pro-police rally to oppose violence. "I feel extremely uncomfortable when every time I watch TV, the scenes are so radical," she said. "Young people should stop and think. Don't become someone's political tools. Be rational, please." The organizer estimated the size of the Victoria Park crowd was 90,000, while the police said it was 26,000 at its peak. More protests planned. The protests against the extradition bill have become the most serious political crisis in Hong Kong since return to Chinese rule 22 years ago after governed by Britain. Hong Kong has been allowed to retain extensive freedoms, such as an independent judiciary, that many residents see as the latest step in a relentless march towards mainland control. Believe me, I understand you're not wanting to go back to have mainland control. In fact, many people in Hong Kong want the British to come back. But that's really not going to be doable. The Chinese government has got you, and, that ship has officially sailed. It'll be decades before you guys ever see independence from mainland China again. I hate to say it, but that's just the political truth of the matter. And this is only going to make things worse. The protests also marked the greatest popular challenge to Chinese leader Xi Jinping since he took office in 2012. He is already grappling with an escalating trade war with the United States and a slowing economy. This is an especially sensitive year for China's Communist Party leadership, which will mark the 70th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic on October 1st. Further anti-government protests were scheduled in Hong Kong for Sunday, with activists calling for a mass strike on Monday. Months of demonstrations are taking a growing toll on the city's economy as local shoppers and tourists avoid parts of one of the world's most famous shopping destinations. On Friday evening, thousands of civil servants defied a warning from authorities to remain politically neutral and joined the anti-government protests for the first time. In Washington on Friday, a bipartisan group of U.S. lawmakers called on the Trump administration to halt future sales of munitions and crowd control equipment to Hong Kong police force, which has been accused of using excessive force against protesters. Well, when you respond to umbrellas being thrown at you with tear gas and other military-grade munitions, I think something on your side has gone a little awry. But, you know what? I really think we should maybe wash our hands of it. It's a highly controversial thing, and the last thing we need is to be implicated. Needless to say, the United States, I think, needs to back out of the world stage for a time and take a serious look inward before returning. We need a couple decades of introspective before we decide what to do next, because I think we have seriously gone astray from where we should be. What with the constant illegal wars, foreign interventionism, and nosing into business that it doesn't concern us. Admittedly, you know, we've been selling weapons to I think it was Taiwan. Excuse me. I think we might want to consider stop doing that as well. Maybe a total withdrawal would not be best, but maybe take a serious step back and then do that introspective look I was talking about before deciding what our role in the world stage should be. We need to start over, fresh, when it comes to our foreign policy and that of our foreign interventionism. But as for China, I think I can say without a doubt that China as a nation has definitely crossed several lines. But these protesters have crossed a line of their own. If they chose to be peaceful, they might have had sympathy. But they chose to be violent. And now, instead, they've afforded sympathy for the Chinese police force, which will complicate their efforts further, and will make them look like the villain. Even if they're not, it will at least appear that way from a certain point of view. I mean, have you learned anything from Obi-Wan? I mean, come on. So, yeah. Anyway,